The galactic science vessel Curiosity, eternal, hovered in low orbit above Earth, its shimmering hull reflecting solar flares like ripples of molten silver. Inside, dignitaries, biologists, and a few bored soldiers stood around a containment field watching a small, furred creature gnaw on the corner of a carbon steel crate. It shouldn't have been possible. Yet here they were, watching metal splinters ping across the floor like confetti at a depressing birthday party. Fascinating, purred High Scientist Yareth, all 12 of his eye stalks squinting. The human companion beast is exhibiting disobedient behavioral patterns. Aggressive, primitive, disgusting. I believe the correct term is pet, sir, said Zibble, a junior xenologist, barely tall enough to reach the control panel. His mandibles clicked nervously. The humans often show emotional dependency on their pets. They give them names, allow them into sleeping chambers, sometimes even share nutrient packs. A warbling chuckle swept through the observation bay. The Galactic Council dignitaries exchanged smug glances, the universal expression of condescension. Utterly primitive, sneered Commander Varknor, his voice like a chainsaw melting through frozen butter. They bond with vermin, filthy rodents. I've seen one human kissing a creature that looked like a disease made of hair and screaming. Sir, that was a Pomeranian, Zibble muttered. Very popular among suburban human females. Below, inside the containment chamber, the creature in question, low to the ground, built like a brick, with claws, snorted, licked its nose, and then casually flipped onto its back to chew its own foot. Its fur was a swirling mix of dark brown and silver, its eyes glinting with malice and chaotic glee. I believe it's called a honey badger, Zibble said, reading from his pad. Species, Malivera capensis. Natural habitat, Earth's savannas and forests. Known for complete disregard for pain, authority, or natural order. The dignitaries observed silently as the honey badger snapped a surveillance drone clean in half. One dignitary coughed, and the human... Varknor growled. She stood in the adjacent holding cell, disheveled but somehow smug. Tara McKinnon leaned against the wall with crossed arms, chewing something that looked like dried meat and annoyance. She had been snatched from her cabin in the mountains of Montana mid-hunt, right in the middle of tracking a bull elk. She hadn't even finished her coffee. That alone made her murdery. Do I get a phone call? Or is this one of those probe first, ask later kind of abductions? She called out. Because if you're planning on prodding me with something slimy, I hope you brought gloves. And tequila. Zibble looked flustered. She has not stopped making sarcastic comments since she woke up. At first, we believed she was experiencing cranial trauma, but now we're not sure if this is her natural communication style. Tara leaned against the glass, smirking. What gave it away, genius? The fact I called your commander Squidward with roid rage, or that I sang Bon Jovi's Wanted Dead or Alive while you sedated my pet. She calls the beast Rambo, Zibble whispered. After a human warrior. Varknor's expression twisted. She named her rodent after a soldier? Technically, Tara said, after an American icon who never backs down, fights dirty, and looks amazing while shirtless and covered in mud. Which, if you ask me, is a dead ringer for that little bastard. She nodded toward the honey badger, now aggressively digging at the reinforced flooring like it had insulted his mother. Why keep such a dangerous animal as a companion? Yareth asked. Tara's grin faded just a touch. Because when the world goes sideways, I don't need a golden retriever. I need a friend who bites first and never asks questions. There was a pause as that unsettling answer settled into the collective consciousness of the galactic elite. Zibble shifted uncomfortably, tapping at his console. We thought humans kept pets for emotional support. I do, she said. He emotionally supports my enemies straight into the ER. A few of the scientists began murmuring nervously. "We have deemed the human and its asset suitable for display," Varknor said flatly. "A simple educational segment. We will allow dignitaries to view her and the beast from a safe distance. Their behavior will be monitored and broadcast across the Empire. Think of it as galactic entertainment." Terra's eyes narrowed. "You're making a zoo out of me?" "Display," Zibble offered. "Very tasteful. Plenty of room." "I want a lawyer," she said. "We don't have those," Varknor grunted. "We evolved past litigation after the paperwork war of 7.2 times 10 to the power of -5. And where's my damn badger?" The chamber lights dimmed. All attention turned to the enclosure below. Dozens of nobles and ambassadors gathered behind a force field-lined window. Cameras hovered above. The show was about to begin. Rambo had been placed on a small replica of his native terrain, sand, brush, a rock shaped vaguely like Texas. A robotic arm descended from the ceiling, holding a slab of raw meat wrapped in synthetic vines. "That's a bad idea," Terra muttered. "Observe," Zibble narrated over the intercom. "The primitive creature approaches sustenance. Note the ungraceful gait. It moves with the confidence of a beast who has never faced natural consequence." The arm dropped the meat. A second drone whirred forward to analyze Rambo's feeding process. The honey badger paused, tilted its head, sniffed, then leapt 6 feet straight up, latched onto the drone like a grenade, and tore it apart midair. Screaming erupted from the spectators. One alien's monocle shattered from sheer shock. "Oh look," Terra drawled. "He made a friend." "Disengage observation mode," Varknor barked. Too late. Rambo had found the edge of the force field. Testing it with his claws, he sniffed, growled, and began to dig. With one quick motion, he flung himself bodily at the corner of the enclosure. A strange ripple echoed through the floor. The lights flickered. Zibble slapped buttons. "Sir, he's interfering with the harmonic containment sequence. Fix it." "I don't know how." Rambo vanished from view. The force field cracked, and then Rambo burst out of the floor tile directly under the dignitary lounge, trailing sparks, smoke, and what might have been part of a capacitor. The aliens screamed in every octave known to biology. "Oh, for the love of Rambo down!" Terra shouted, slamming her fist into the glass. "That's not your meat." The honey badger hissed, ignored her, and launched himself at a tall ambassador with delicate crystal wings. What followed was 2 minutes of chaos, 12 injuries, several broken limbs, and one flustered dignitary wetting themselves live on empire-wide broadcast. Rambo ended his rampage by perching atop a shattered console, meat chunk in his mouth, flanked by sparks. He licked his lips. He burped. Loudly. Terra smiled. "That's my boy." Later, after the med teams dragged the injured away and what remained of the observation room was declared a biohazard, Varknor stormed down to the holding cells. Terra sat in her now partially destroyed chamber, arms behind her head, legs crossed, whistling Sweet Home, Alabama. "This is an act of war," the commander hissed. "Your species will be sanctioned. Your world fined. You will be." "Can I stop you right there?" Terra interrupted. "If you think anyone on Earth gives a steaming pile of possum dung about your fines, I got news. We've been nuking each other over flavored soda and gas prices for decades. We live in chaos. We thrive in it. Your animal is a menace. That animal sleeps in my sock drawer. What's your excuse?" He growled, baring a set of mandibles. Terra stood, slowly, deliberately, her gaze locked with his. "You think I'm scared of you? I've stared down a bull moose during rut season. I've fought off a grizzly with nothing but a shovel. I drink water straight from mountain streams, and my immune system laughs in the face of E. coli. I can field dress a deer, Make a fire from a battery and chewing gum, and if you touch my badger again, I will dismantle your ship and sell the parts on Craigslist." Varknor stepped back. Just half a step. "You're insane." Tara grinned. "I'm American." Behind her, Rambo appeared in the vent shaft, blood-streaked, smug, and somehow wearing a crown made of bent circuits. He squeaked. Tara looked over her shoulder. "You hungry, boy?" Rambo bared his teeth in what could only be described as a war smile. From the upper decks, alarms began to blare. Zibbel's voice came over the intercom, panicked. "Security breach. Repeat, security breach. The containment field has been compromised. The honey badger is loose again. I repeat, Rambo is loose." Tara looked up at the blinking lights, then down at her cuffs. "Guess it's showtime." And as the force field holding her snapped off with a hiss and a pop, she stepped forward, cracked her neck, and said one last thing before disappearing into the chaos. "Y'all should have left me in Montana." The emergency klaxon screamed through the Curiosity, eternal, like a drunk trombonist on fire. Red lights flashed in epileptic dissonance, disorienting crew and officials alike as automated doors slammed shut with mechanical urgency. The corridor pulsed with confusion. Smoke leaked from severed conduits. Panic was airborne. Rambo was officially uncontained. Tara McKinnon, now fully out of her cell, and wearing the smugness of a raccoon in a chicken coop, walked through the chaos like she was late for breakfast. Her expression was unhurried, her posture relaxed. The only urgency in her stride came from the sounds of Rambo somewhere ahead, muffled shrieks, metal shrieking under claw, and the kind of chaos that sounded suspiciously like furniture being digested. A panicked officer staggered around the corner, face bleeding, uniform shredded. He looked up at Tara, trembling. It's in the ventilation system. It's everywhere. I swear it teleported." She paused and squinted. "You mean the honey badger? Teleported? Really?" The officer nodded frantically. It stared into the reactor core." Tara whistled, low and impressed. "Yup, that's Rambo." Behind her, another section of wall exploded as a cleaning drone ejected itself from the maintenance shaft, trailing sparks and bad decisions. The drone's casing was dented inward, like it had been chewed. Tara ducked. From the same shaft, Rambo appeared upside down, snarling, drooling, and carrying what looked like a plasma scalpel in his mouth. He flung it aside and dropped onto her shoulder like a furry vulture from hell. She winced. "Glad you found me, bud. We've got a lot of sightseeing to do." Down the corridor, Zibbel clutched a data slate with both trembling claws. "Tara McKinnon, by order of the Galactic Observation Command, I must demand you surrender yourself and the creature. Peacefully." She looked him up and down. "Zibbel, was it? Listen, you seem like the kind of alien who watches David Attenborough documentaries and drinks tea with pinkies up. So here's a bit of advice. You don't demand anything from a woman whose favorite accessory is a wild animal with a murder complex. But there are protocols. You're disrupting a multi-species peace operation." She raised an eyebrow. "Your empire abducted me from Earth mid-coffee, stuck me in a glass box, tried to parade me and Rambo like freaks in some intergalactic dog show, and you're surprised I'm not playing nice." Zibbel hesitated. "We didn't mean." She stepped closer, Rambo hissing like a busted radiator. "Next time you want to study humans, try a podcast. Now get out of my way before he decides you smell like beef jerky." Zibbel bolted. His data slate hit the floor with a tragic ping. Tara turned the next corner and ducked behind a bulkhead as a squad of Galactic security officers stormed past. They moved with the precision of elite soldiers, armor gleaming, weapons drawn. She peeked as one of them barked. "Target is a quadrupedal mammal of indeterminate threat level. Do not engage unless absolutely necessary." and for the love of the stars, do not let it make eye contact." Tara snorted. "Indeterminate threat level. That's generous." Rambo sneezed. As the soldiers vanished into the smoke, Tara turned to a nearby interface console. "All right, let's see if I can MacGyver my way through this mess." She yanked open a service panel with a boot knife she'd stolen from a particularly loud alien captain back in the chaos. Inside were layers of pulsating conduits, fiber optic nerves, and something that looked suspiciously like it was alive. "Okay, no big deal," she murmured. "Just reroute the security lockdown, disable life sign scanners, and find the bridge. Piece of cake." Rambo nosed at the panel. "Yes, I know I'm making it up as I go." She hotwired 2 circuits with a twist of copper wire and a bit of foil from her emergency jerky wrapper. The panel sparked, flickered, and then lit up like a Christmas tree. Boom. "Who's your hacker queen now?" Rambo screeched in agreement. Or hunger. Hard to tell. On the bridge, Commander Varknor was foaming at several mouths. "How is this possible? You mean to tell me the human bypassed security using snack packaging?" One officer cleared his throat. "Technically, yes, sir." "Where is she now?" A technician turned, eyes wide. "Sir, she's rerouted primary access corridors. She's headed straight for central engineering." Varknor stared at the projection of the human woman walking boldly through the ship, stopping only to rip wires out of wall panels or whistle casually. Behind her, the honey badger rode like a general on a mobile war throne. "I want that animal captured," Varknor barked. "Alive, if possible. Dead, if necessary. But most importantly, not near my face again." In central engineering, Tara stood at the edge of a glowing energy core. Cylindrical, pulsing with soft blue light, the core vibrated with humming power. It was the ship's heart, and probably its biggest weakness. "Looks delicate," she said. Rambo leapt from her shoulder, landed atop the console, and proceeded to scratch at it like it owed him money. Sparks flew. "You might want to slow down, killer." The door behind her whooshed open. Zibble appeared again, panting, eyes wild. "What are you doing?" "That's the gravitational control module." Tara didn't turn. "Was wondering how long you'd last before your academic guilt dragged you back here. You can't just tear things apart." "I'm not tearing anything," she said, tapping a button. "I'm initiating creative spatial disruption." "That doesn't mean anything." "It will when you start floating." The lights dimmed, the hum intensified, and suddenly the floor lifted out from beneath them. Zibble yelped as he drifted upward, flailing helplessly. "Oh no! Oh stars! Oh flarking plasma!" Tara floated up calmly, holding onto a wall pipe with one hand. "Welcome to Zero-G. You boys ever hear of Apollo 13? No. Shame. Great movie. Tom Hanks kills it." Below, the security squad stumbled into the chamber, only to be caught mid-leap, tumbling like confused bowling pins. Tara kicked off the wall and glided through the chamber, snatching a plasma tool from one officer's belt as she drifted past. Rambo ping-ponged between them like a razor-bladed beach ball, biting anything that looked uniformed. The firefight that ensued looked more like interpretive dance than war. Lasers missed targets by inches as soldiers floated helplessly. Tara executed a somersault, landed atop a console, and used her plasma tool to weld the door shut behind her. "You'll thank me later," she shouted. Then she turned to the ship's core AI interface, a pulsating sphere embedded in a glowing podium. The AI spoke in a smooth, sterile voice. "Identify yourself." "Tara McKinnon. Unauthorized, unqualified, and extremely pissed off. Access denied. Override code. Rambo is the boss. Access granted." She blinked. "Wait, what?" The AI continued. "After extensive observation, we have determined the entity known as Rambo is the ship's apex entity. Safety protocols have adjusted accordingly. Terra turned slowly. Rambo sat behind her, licking his claws, looking smug. "Well, I'll be damned," she muttered. "He's king of the ship." On the bridge, Commander Varknor stared at the same footage. The AI submitted to the creature? A technician whimpered. It adapted to a new alpha hierarchy based on aggression, resistance to damage, and ability to destroy ship hardware with its face. Varknor slammed a tentacle on the control console. "Send in the drones. All of them. I want that beast in a containment pod and that human spaced." Dozens of automated drones detached from the underbelly of the ship, their sleek hulls glinting like obsidian daggers. They launched in synchronized formation, armed with stun blasters, net cannons, and behavioral override nodes. Terra watched the swarm approach through a viewport. "Looks like party crashers." She glanced at Rambo. "What do you think, buddy? Fight or flight?" He growled. "Yeah, that's what I thought." She took off sprinting through a maintenance tunnel. The drones entered behind her, forming a tight pursuit pattern. As she ran, she snatched open a side panel and rewired 2 conduits. "If I can reverse their polarity just a hair." Rambo jumped off her shoulder, grabbed a glowing wire in his jaws, and yanked. The drones blinked midair, buzzed, and suddenly slammed into each other like confused metal pigeons. Explosions lit the hall. Terra slid to a stop and high-fived her badger. "Boom, baby. That's how we do it in Montana." Moments later, in the ruins of the maintenance corridor, she found herself facing a rebel crew of alien engineers. They'd been watching everything through hijacked security feeds. The leader stepped forward, a lanky, bug-eyed being with a wide grin. "We've been waiting for someone to show these Empire bastards what real chaos looks like." Terra raised a brow. "You rebels?" "No. We're nerds with poor impulse control. But we like rebels. And we like you more." Rambo sneezed on the leader's boots. The alien didn't even flinch. "Respect." Terra smiled. "All right. You want in. Good. I'm gonna need explosives, access to the bridge, and a fresh pack of beef jerky." He grinned. "You'll have it. And for the record, I love Die Hard." "Yippee-ki-yay," she whispered, strapping on a utility belt. Somewhere above them, the command crew was reeling from the latest report. "She's taken engineering," the comms officer muttered. "She's recruited a rebel crew," said another. Varknor stared into the holographic projection of Terra and Rambo, surrounded by cheering defectors, explosions behind them. Then, in the quiet of the bridge, a new alert blinked to life. "All ship systems now under new user. Rambo." Terra's voice came over the loudspeaker, crackling and confident. "This is your captain speaking. Please remain in your quarters, prepare to be mildly terrified, and don't poke the badger." The bridge plunged into silence. Varknor sank into his command chair, hands trembling. "I underestimated the mammal." And across the ship, as klaxons died and lights dimmed to emergency blue, Rambo chewed through another fiber-optic wire, tail twitching with amusement, while Terra leaned back in her stolen chair and smiled. The real fun was just beginning. The emergency beacon pulsed like a dying star, red and frantic across the galaxy. From the throne world of Vexilin Prime to the diplomatic arcologies of Yerktun, a single message bounced between relay stations and comm buoys, growing in urgency and absurdity. Empire-wide containment protocol initiated. Code Rambo. On every channel, over every comm, flashed the image of a small, snarling Earth mammal, fur raised, eyes wild, muzzle coated in what could only be alien circuitry and blood. The attached footage was worse. Dignitaries screaming, drones exploding, command halls engulfed in chaos. And always somewhere in the frame, a woman grinning like she was in on a joke the galaxy didn't understand. In the war room aboard the Galactic dreadnought Osirax Eternal, Supreme Commander Drelvik of the Imperial Fleet stared in disbelief at the replay. He was a veteran of 17 system purges. His tentacles bore ceremonial burns from the acid war of Trinex. He had personally executed a Krakari war priest during the night siege of Seraph 9. He had never been afraid of anything in his life. But this shook him. "She commands the AI," his adjutant whispered. "She rides the animal," added another. "She plays Earth music through the ship's PA system," said a third, voice trembling. "She called it Def Leopard." Drelvik narrowed all 6 eyes. "Where is Varknor?" "Still aboard the Curiosity Eternal, sir. But communications are intermittent. Last recorded statement was, 'It's in the vents again. Oh stars, I can smell its breath.'" The commander turned to the tactical holomap. The image of the ship was now overlaid with bright red hazard markers. Sections were flashing. Occupied, controlled, sabotaged. The core readout pulsed a new warning. "Primary user, Rambo." Drelvik inhaled. "We underestimated them. They're primitives," the adjutant said. "Unrefined. They still use combustion vehicles." "They also microwave fish in office kitchens," Drelvik muttered. "Only a species that dangerous could birth something like this." Back on the Curiosity Eternal, Terra lounged in what had once been the officers' mess. It was now decorated with salvaged trophies, broken plasma rifles, armor plates, and a banner that said, "Welcome TO Earth," spray-painted in crude Galactic script. She leaned back in a stolen command chair, one boot propped on the table. Rambo slept beside her, curled atop a ruined protocol droid like a victorious war god on his throne. Zibble paced nervously nearby, wringing his claws. "You've incited panic across 12 systems. Do you understand that? Do you understand the scale?" She popped a piece of jerky into her mouth. "I understand that no one should have poked the badger. But here we are." Zibble threw his arms up. "There are wanted bulletins in every quadrant. They put your face on an official Empire threat list, above the psionic worms of Skrell." Terra blinked. "Nice. Do I get a t-shirt or something?" "No, you get death squads." She smirked. "Haven't met a squad, yet I couldn't out-hike, out-fight, or out-weird. What's their plan? Send more drones? That went great last time." Zibble lowered his voice. "No, they're sending Commander Varknor's replacement." That gave her pause. Rambo snorted in his sleep. "Who?" "They call him the Butcher of Nebulon 4. He once strangled a rebel warlord with his own exoskeleton." Terra leaned forward, tossing the jerky bag aside. "Sounds like my kind of first date." Moments later, the ship trembled under an approaching gravitational signature. On every sensor across the vessel, a single cruiser approached, sleek, obsidian black, angular like a dagger designed for intimidation alone. Its transponder broadcasted one word, Judicator. On the bridge of the incoming cruiser, Commander Zarn stepped from his stasis pod. He was tall, lean, and quiet. Unlike the blustering Varknor, Zarn didn't waste words. His armor was matte black, etched with bone-colored scars from long-dead enemies. His only companion was a neural interface serpent that slithered around his neck, whispering tactical predictions in his ear. "The asset is a female human," the serpent said. "She commands the beast. The beast commands the ship. Recommendation, total purge." Zarn said nothing. He simply nodded once and stepped into the drop pod. The force of the pod's arrival shook the Curiosity Eternal like it had been struck by a comet. Metal warped. Bolts popped. Terra felt the tremor under her boots and narrowed her eyes. She stood, rolling her shoulders. "Wake up, Rambo. We've got company." The honey badger yawned, stretched, and began gnawing on a nearby support beam like a pre-fight snack. Zibble peeked out the window. "He's here. He's on board. I suggest we run." "Too late," she said, already moving. The hallway lights flickered. one by one, as the air chilled unnaturally. Down the corridor, mist curled from the seams in the walls, condensation dripping like sweat from the ship's skin. Commander Zarn stepped into view. He didn't walk, so much as glide, fluid and mechanical, every step calculated. The neural serpent hissed. Target locked. Terminate with prejudice. Terra raised a plasma cutter, thumbed it on. You here to fix the plumbing or start a fight? Zarn raised one hand, and a column of force slammed Terra back against the bulkhead. Before he could follow up, a blur of fur and teeth launched at his face. Rambo collided with Zarn mid-leap, jaws latching onto his helmet visor. Sparks exploded as the honey badger clawed and bit with abandon. Zarn staggered, shielding his eyes, trying to dislodge the beast now latched to his head like an angry hat. Terra recovered, dove forward, and tackled them both. The corridor became a vortex of snarls, plasma, and adrenaline. Sparks rained from severed wires. The serpent AI shrieked, "Hostile acquisition! Hostile acquisition! Adjusting strategy!" Terra punched the AI so hard the serpent's voice glitched into static. She grabbed Rambo midair, spun, and kicked off a panel, diving into a maintenance hatch. They tumbled into darkness, breathing hard. Zibble's voice buzzed through the comm. "What was that?" "The Empire's idea of diplomacy," Terra replied. "Tell your rebel buddies, we're going to Plan B." Zibble's voice was shaky. "What's Plan B?" "Blow up the command core and steal the ship." "That's not a plan. That's suicide." She smiled in the dark. "Then let's make it look good." As Terra sprinted through the engineering corridors, she barked orders into the comm to rebel-aligned technicians who'd defected to her cause. All of them had grown tired of the Empire's rules, the red tape, the meaningless regulations. She gave them a new banner to rally under: chaos, resistance, and good ol' Earth-style rebellion. In 10 minutes, the plan was in motion. Saboteurs planted ion disruptors on Deck 5. Engineering rerouted power to the propulsion thrusters and away from security systems. Terra and Rambo made their way to the command core. Zarn pursued them through the twisting corridors, his armor dented, his rage silent but palpable. He didn't shout, didn't taunt, he hunted. Cold, relentless, efficient. Inside the command chamber, Terra worked fast. The console pulsed with strange glyphs, but she'd already learned the layout. She accessed the AI, Rambo's AI now, and punched in the override. A warning flashed. Detonation sequence initiated. Behind her, the door burst open. Zarn stood silhouetted by the corridor lights. Faceplate cracked, blood, his or someone else's, dripping from his gauntlets. "This ends now," he said. Terra cracked her knuckles. "Yup. You first." The two clashed again, this time no weapons, no tricks, just fists and fury. Terra fought dirty, like a bar brawler raised on Clint Eastwood and caffeine. Zarn fought like a machine, every move economical and brutal. He caught her mid-swing, threw her across the room. She slammed into the control panel. It shattered. She groaned, spitting blood. Rambo shrieked. He flew at Zarn one last time, biting deep into the exposed wires of his gauntlet. Electricity arced. Zarn screamed, not in pain, but rage. Terra crawled back to the console. Seconds left. She hit the final command. Evacuation pods activated. "Come on, fuzzball," she said, scooping up Rambo. As she sprinted toward the escape pod bay, the command core behind her lit up with warning lights. Zarn tried to follow, but his damaged armor locked up mid-stride. He fell to one knee, the ship groaning underfoot. Terra dove into a pod, hit the ignition, and felt the massive jolt as it detached and launched into the stars. Behind her, the Curiosity Eternal erupted in a beautiful cascade of silent fire. From orbit, It looked like a dying sun flaring out in defiance. Inside the pod, Tara leaned back, cradling Rambo. He licked her face, content. "All right, buddy," she whispered. "Now we're officially wanted fugitives in 12 systems. Let's make it 20. The pod drifted into the darkness, broadcasting one last message. To all ships. Code Rambo escaped. Human ally intact. Mission failure. Repeat, failure. Commander Drelvik received the report an hour later. He read it in silence, then looked up. "Prepare the fleet," he said. "Should we pursue?" "No," Drelvik growled. "We don't pursue forces of nature. We prepare for when they return." And out there, in the black, Tara adjusted course toward Earth. She had a planet to warn, a galaxy to antagonize, and a new mission forming in her mind. The Empire wanted containment. She was going to give them contagion. The smell of burning ion drives and victory still clung to the escape pod's cabin, faint and metallic, like scorched copper and ozone. Tara McKinnon sat in the pilot's seat, one boot propped on the console, the other foot tapping in rhythm to the hum of the stars passing by. Rambo lay curled in her lap, snoring softly, belly distended from a stolen ration pack labeled in 3 alien languages and one crude drawing of a screaming face with an X through it. They had left the shattered remains of the Curiosity Eternal behind like a dropped match in a dry forest. The Galactic net was ablaze with reports, contradicting headlines, and panicked declarations. Words like incident, rogue human, and biological terror event scrolled endlessly across subspace tickers. And in every clip, every feed, every frightened broadcast, there was the footage. A human woman with duct tape on her arm, jerky in her mouth, and a feral mammal on her shoulder. Commander Zarn had not been heard from since the ship's destruction, officially listed as MIA, unofficially presumed humiliated into retirement, exile, or existential crisis. Tara reached into her jacket and pulled out a comm unit she'd hacked into functioning, bypassing encryption protocols with sheer stubbornness and some chewing gum. She opened the channel to Earth. There was static at first, then a click. A woman's voice came through. "Tara? Is that? Oh my God. Tara, you're alive." She grinned. "Damn right I am. Hey Marcy, how's the cabin?" "Still here. Local cops stopped by. Asked if you'd joined an extremist wildlife cult. I told them no cult in its right mind would take you." "That's fair. What the hell happened?" Tara paused, glancing down at Rambo. He snorted and rolled over. "We made an impression," she said simply. Back in Galactic Command, the mood had shifted from condescending arrogance to tightly controlled panic. The highest members of the Empire's ruling council sat in a private chamber, watching looped footage of Rambo chewing through fiber optic cable as if it were spaghetti. They had tried suppression. It failed. The footage leaked. And now, across dozens of systems, something new had taken hold. Admiration. On Carcos V, a street gang now called themselves the Rambonians. On Delta 9, a band of pirate mechanics had painted their ship with a mural of a snarling honey badger mid-leap, fangs bared. And on Trillac Station, an entire bar cheered every time Tara's name was mentioned. The propaganda teams were losing control of the narrative. Fast, Counselor Jordek paced across the chamber, robes flaring dramatically with every step. "This cannot continue. If we allow one human and her creature to openly defy us and escape consequence, we invite 1,000 others to do the same. It undermines everything we stand for." "She has already undermined it," Counselor Vielen replied, tapping her claws against the polished stone table. With nothing but instinct, stubbornness, and an animal powered by fury and snacks, she humiliated our officers, broke into classified systems, and escaped with the ship's core AI acknowledging her authority. She's an outlier. Jordek growled. She's a symbol now, Vielen corrected, and if we don't spin this the right way, she'll become a movement. At that moment, a diplomatic attaché entered the chamber, flanked by a terrified assistant, carrying a tray of what looked like glazed meat sticks and vacuum-sealed snack packs. "Counselors," the attaché began, voice trembling. We received a message, directly addressed to the Empire, from the human." Everyone froze. He cleared his throat. "It's a video." She calls it a press conference. The screen lit up. There was Tara, seated on a folding chair in front of a busted shuttle console, chewing on jerky and glaring at the camera like she'd rather be anywhere else. "Hi there," she said. "Tara McKinnon, resident of Earth, species. The one y'all shouldn't have messed with. Just thought I'd clarify a few things for the record." She tossed the jerky bag aside and leaned in. "First, Rambo is not a genetically enhanced bioweapon. He's a honey badger. They're like raccoons if raccoons did CrossFit and had nothing to live for but spite." Rambo wandered into frame, dragging a laser rifle twice his size. "Second, I didn't declare war on the Galactic Empire. I declared hell no. I'm not sitting in a cage while you film me like I'm part of some interstellar nature documentary. There's a difference." She raised a brow. "And third, I'm not alone. Earth's got a few billion more, just like me. Folks who don't like being prodded, poked, or patronized. People who'll duct tape a flamethrower to a lawn mower if it means winning." She smiled, slow and dangerous. "If you want peace, I suggest treats. Rambo likes beef jerky. I like bourbon. Send both, and we'll call it even." The video cut out. Silence fell over the chamber. Counselor Vielen exhaled. "She's given us an out." Jordek frowned. "You want to apologize?" "To a human." She didn't ask for an apology. She asked for snacks. 3 days later, a diplomatic envoy made contact. Tara sat in a stolen alien lounge chair on a rogue refueling station orbiting a dead moon.